Hi there, and welcome to this JavaScript tutorial for absolute beginners. In this video, we're going to talk about JavaScript data types and some simple operations you can do with them so you can become an expert by learning the basics of JavaScript. In JavaScript, there are two categories of data types, primitive and non-primitive. Primitive data types are the simple building blocks of the language. Think of it like Lego blocks that you play. They include numbers, strings, booleans, null, and identified. These are the most basic data types that represent a single value. Let's start by talking about the basics of the first type, which will be strings. Strings are a sequence of characters enclosed in single, double quotes, or backticks. You can concatenate multiple strings using the plus operator, like this. Let's say we define a variable by doing let str1 and we say equals to hello. Then we define a second variable, let str2 and then equals, and as I said, we can use single quotes or double quotes, world. These will create two different variables that are strings, and then we can use them and concatenate them together to build a new string. Let's say let greeting equals str1 plus, and this will concatenate the strings, and we can put other strings or variables here. In this case, we're going to add a comma plus str2 plus exclamation point. Then we can console log our greeting, and we would see hello world. This is a great operation for us to add two different strings into one and then use it for what we need. As you can see, it does not matter that we started with single quotes or double quotes, as they both get represented as strings. As I mentioned, you can also use backticks, which is a special way to define strings that allows us to also do other types of operations that we'll learn in future videos. But at the end of the day, it all gets represented as strings. Next up, we have numbers. In JavaScript, there's two types of numbers, integers and floating point numbers, meaning numbers with decimal points. You can perform arithmetic operations on numbers, such as additions, subtractions, multiplications, divisions, and even get the modulus, which is the remainder of the division. We can do something like this, where we define a variable, such as let x equals 10 and let y equals 3, which will define our two variables, x and y, with two different integer values. We can sum them, x plus y, and it will add these two variables. We can also do other arithmetic operations, such as subtraction, which will give us the difference. We can also do the product or multiplication of them by doing the multiplication sign or star, and then we can do the division by using the slash. We can console log all these numbers by doing console.log, and then we can do sum, comma, difference, comma, difference, comma, product, comma, division. Console log is a way for us to log something to the console so we can see what's happening. And we can pass in one variable or multiple variables, and it will console log them all at the same time. In our case, we have 13, 7, 30, and 3.3333333335. As you can see here, it actually uses 5 at the end because it's rounding the number. With numbers, we can also do other operations, mathematical operations, such as rounding up, rounding down, always up, always down, or rounding to the closest number. You can do this by doing the math operation that round for rounding to the closest number, meaning lower than 5 will round to 0 and higher than 5 will round to the next number. You can use ceiling to always round up, regardless of it being 0.1, it will always go to the next number, or you can use floor, which will always send it to the lowest number. In the case of 3.3, it will send it to 3. Moving to Booleans, which are either true or false, which is a special data type that can be used to define whether an operation or something we're doing evaluates to true or false. You can use logical operations to combine them and then perform certain logical gates to define whether or not you want something to happen, or if certain conditions are met, something is true or false. Though some of these logical operations are and, or, and not. Here's an example. Let's say we define a variable saying is sunny, and this will be true. We can also define whether another variable saying is warm, define it as true. And then we can define other things such as let is cloudy as false. By having these operations, by having these variables here, we can then use simple operations on these values to define whether or not, let's say, we want to go out. So we can say should go outside, and I will only go outside if it's sunny and is not warm and is cloudy. Meaning when all these conditions are met as true, then I will go outside. Because it's sun is true, that means that it's true. But then here on this check, when it says is warm false, meaning it's not warm, because in this case it's true and negated it's false, this becomes a false operation. So at the end, it will be evaluated to false, as I should not go outside. So when we console log should go outside, this will be evaluated to false. Let's say it's not warm anymore, and instead it is cold. Our last check is cloudy, which is also false. In this case, we'll also evaluate to false. The moment that we move this to be true, because I like to go outside when it's cloudy, then it evaluates to true, because all conditions are met. It's sunny, it's not warm, and it's cloudy, which does not make sense, but it's a good way to show what we mean with logical operations and what are the things that we can do. The next data type that I want to talk about is undefined. It normally happens when a variable is declared but has not assigned any value. This is the initial value of a variable. It is very important for us to understand what undefined could mean, because it could be used to validate the existence of a value. In this case, when we do let undefined bar and we console log the undefined bar, what's gonna console log is the undefined, if I know how to spell, it will console log undefined, because that is the value of that variable. It is created, it exists, but it's not defined. And as I said, it is useful when we're doing certain operations where we want to verify that a value exists before we continue. So we know if it's undefined is that it does not exist. And last but not least, I want to talk about null, which is also a special type of value which represents the intentionality of absence of a value. An example here is that I can define a variable called null var, and then I can assign the null value. It basically means void or empty. Similar to undefined, it could be used for us to define where something is void or it's missing. And as you can see, it console log null. I hope you learned a lot with this lesson, and you continue coming here to learn more about different data types in JavaScript. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.